everyone, Tony D with another Piney podcast. Not a whole lot to report today. It's Sunday, and as we all know, government workers and the beer virus takes off. We're down to about 500 cases. Just in case you're not keeping score, the percentage of the 9 million people who live in New Jersey who got sick from the beer virus is 0.01%. I believe it was 0.01. Yeah, 0.01%. So that's a pretty low number. Pretty low number. 0.01%. Yeah. And that was just the people who got infected that we know of. They suspect there's a lot more. Now, in terms of deaths, I believe it was something like 0.001%. So, we had I think 160,000 cases and then 16,000 deaths, something like that. So it's a pretty low number. Not that it matters anymore. The Democratic Party seems to be moving off of the virus. But it's interesting to me that Phil has copied some of the strategy in New York, which, by the way, is going horribly up in New York. New York is still a dystopian hellscape. And worse, today they announced in New York that the DA wouldn't charge protesters for Black Lives Matter, which is unbelievably biased. You cannot side with a political group. Now, you could come out and say, we will not charge peaceful protesters. Obviously. I mean, there is no law against peaceful protesting. It's guaranteed by the Constitution. But to specifically come out and point to Black Lives Matter and say, we're not going to prosecute you, you've made a terrible tactical error and a terrible error just optically. You're basically saying that anybody in the Black Lives Matter movement, is free to roam and do whatever they want. That's kind of the implication. You don't want that. You don't want the situation in London and in lots of the UK where the cops are too gun shy to ever do anything against a minority for fear of being called a racist. You have to maintain justice, and justice is for everyone, regardless of race. Race is not supposed to impact justice. So, if there are some injustices, like George Floyd, like the old man who got pushed down, they have to be addressed. But beyond that, you can't tip the scales in favor of one group just to say, well, see, we have to because that way it's fair. The University of, I believe it's Washington, is calling for a special grading curve for black students. How are you even helping them with that kind of, I don't even know what to call it, enabling, I guess? You're basically dividing people by race and giving them special treatment. It's racist. It's completely racist. You can call the cops racist all day long, and some of them are, but you can't match the racism tit for tat. That's not what our judicial system is about. And there's a lot of people advocating for that. I'll get into it more in another video. But regarding New Jersey, I have to give Phil a tiny bit of credit because I think what he's done is he straddled the New York strategy, which is horrible, along with a slow roll of opening. Now, maybe that's because Phil kind of realizes that keeping everything locked up this long is bad, or maybe he's not totally on board with the Democratic Party pushing him around. I think it's probably he's just hedging his bet. He just wants to be able to say next year when he runs for re-election in 2021, keep that in mind, that he'll be able to say, well, I did open things. I wanted to do it responsibly. even though it like killed business, even though his indecisiveness, his sort of mush mouth, I don't know what you'd call it, wishy-washy responses. Well, when is this opening up, Phil? Well, we'll see. That's bad for business. Uncertainty is bad for business. If you own a business, like a restaurant, let's say, and you want to open eventually, King Phil, you have to order food in advance, right? You have to get the food, you have to coordinate a bunch of things, and food is perishable. So you can't order the food too soon, and if you order the food too late, then you got to delay another week or two, and you're losing money every day. So by Phil saying things, well, we'll see, that doesn't help anybody. That means nothing. That's worse than a response of no. Because no, you can plan for. Okay, we can't open this week. If you say, well, you might open this week. You might open next week. You don't know. Phil is increasing the uncertainty, and that's bad for business. Now, despite all that, people of New Jersey, and I like to think because there are a lot of Italians here, we're sort of getting around Phil as best we can. One shop owner who I won't tell you where he is, but he runs a sporting goods store, and I think I mentioned him before. He got right into mask and hand sanitizer and all that good stuff. So the lobby of his store is open, so he could sell all that, and he made himself essential. But I'm sure he's selling a few gloves and bats on the side because he kind of can. Now nobody can come into his store, and he's got to keep it limited, but he's making some money. He's making some money. Kudos to him. That's what everybody should have done, unfortunately. You should have made yourself essential. Atlas Jim, I support your struggle. One of the things you might have done, if it was feasible, might not have been feasible for you guys, but open some sort of like health juice bar or something. See, if you sold food, then you'd be able to sell something, and that would be like sort of a wedge in the door to open and maybe get a few people in there. Because then people would be coming in and out of your place, or at least at the front door, and the cops would be used to that. You know what I mean? And then maybe they wouldn't look at you twice, and you could have had people exercising and on the down low and we're essential business. We serve food. Oh, and we have the gym open, just partially. Same thing with barbers and nail salons and stuff. If they had some sort of essential thing to sell, maybe they could have set something up like in the back and set up a chair outside and cut people's hair or whatever. Quite frankly, that's exactly what all these places could be doing. Phil could be, according to the science, say, okay, now we know it's all about being cooped up inside with other people. Therefore, any business outside is a go, right? So you could have people, again, at partial capacity. You move a chair outside, or two or three, how many, you could start cutting people's hair. You could start doing nail salon stuff outside in the sun, where the virus barely survives. But Phil doesn't think that way, because he's not interested in that. He's interested in following a plan where he pleases the DNC, but also keeps the door open to re-election. If you re-elect him, New Jersey, you're an idiot. Don't be an idiot, New Jersey. Do not re-elect this man. He has effed it up for his own personal gain, in my view. And again, he's a rich Goldman Sachs guy. Why do you keep voting for these morons? Rich Goldman Sachs guy. Didn't you learn your lesson with John Corzine? Let me remind you of John Corzine. John Corzine one day gets into one of his cars with a state trooper bodyguards or whatever and goes flying down the Atlantic City Expressway at like 100 miles an hour, gets into a horrific accident. Oh, but he paid for everything, so it's cool. It's not cool. Anybody who had gotten into an accident like John Corzine did would be in jail. They'd be in jail. One rules for thee, but not for me. That's their motto in government. So you want to keep cops accountable. How are you going to keep cops accountable? You can't even keep the government accountable. You have to keep these people accountable. You can't just vote along party lines. No. You can't expect the cops to be accountable when the government picks a side. They're not allowed to pick sides. The moment they pick sides, the moment they deviate from the balance, which is we just enforce the law, justice is blind, out they go. And if they're corrupt, out they go. If they're racist, out they go. You know, one of the things I like about Trump is he keeps firing people. I like that in government. Fire him. Guy doesn't work out, doesn't do his job, out he goes. Get another guy. There's plenty of people who want to work in government. There's plenty of people lining up to serve. And, you know. So, Phil's got to go. The state legislature has to go. The Democrats have to go. They have to be taught we will not stand for this nonsense. Even though Phil got really lucky here. You know, part of the reason, again, I think we got lucky is because Antifa is considered a terrorist organization in New Jersey. And that ups the, the sentencing or whatever. So you get caught doing Antifa stuff here, you're in bigger trouble than you would be in another state. Now that's about to change. It's going to be nationwide. They're going to go after their money, and they're all going to have to go underground, and it's going to be a different ball game. But in the meantime, in terms of safety, New Jersey is slightly safer than other states with regards to Antifa and some of the riots. It seems to be that way. I mean, you have to understand that Camden, Newark, Jersey cities, these were tinderboxes back in the day. They went up the moment something happened with regard to police brutality or race relations. Oh boy, those places, they'd go right up in flames. Nothing this time. Peaceful protest. Bravo, people. Except in Atlantic City. You guys, get your act together down there, will you? But, you know, it doesn't surprise me Atlantic City would do that kind of on its own, probably with no help from Antifa, because the gap between rich and poor down there is a mile wide. And those stores are just stupid anyway. There's a lot of poor people that live on the outskirts of the city, and, they don't really, all the casinos promised, including Donald Trump, promised prosperity and all kinds of stuff if the casinos came in. Didn't really happen. Just drove the poor people out. Now, some of them got jobs. Some of them work in the casinos and do pretty well for themselves. But, overall, the city is better. It's not great. And that, again, falls on government. The government in Atlantic City, in my view, has been corrupt forever. Still very, very corrupt. So beholden to the casinos, you would not believe. And those guys really need to, you need to have somebody totally new in Atlantic City. Oh my gosh. Forget about Democrats, definitely forget about Democrats, but you might want to forget about Republican too. You put a libertarian in AC. That could be something. They could finally, turn that place around. But hopefully we're going to continue to not have any riots. And hopefully Phil, and again, got to keep the pressure on him, will just open the state. He'll see that it's a no-win situation. It's not doing him any good politically. And he'll just say, okay, I led you here to stage 3 or 4 or whatever stage he's talking about. The data's changed and we could just open everything up. So go crazy, New Jersey. Otherwise, I think we may have to suffer through this all through the fall and into November. Maybe even beyond, if he really wants to double down on this. God forbid we get a huge spike in cases. God forbid. Because I think you're going to see real problems here if Phil attempts to wind any of this back. And we'll see if he supports those protests. I have a feeling suddenly it'll be like, oh, not those protests. Those people don't vote for me. Oh, other protests are okay. Because, see, I think, this is from Phil's perspective, he thinks that all the Black Lives Matter protesters are going to vote for him. The truth is, most people who are going to participate in Black Lives Matter are young, and therefore they don't really vote. And I think it's sort of an racist assumption on the Democrats' part to just assume that every black person is going to vote for them. That's not the case at all. That is changing very, very, very rapidly. All right, next video.